Massachusetts Congressman Stephen Lynch is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. The blue-collar champion from Southie working to pull a battered Biden agenda from the ashes. But with Ukraine, inflation, the pandemic, can that happen? The congressman is here. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR on this Sunday morning. I'm Ed Harding, along with News 35's political reporter Janet Wu. It's great to have you with us this morning. More positive news on the drop in COVID cases, and we could be back to the round table and sitting next to each other before you know it. But as you can see, for now, we're keeping our social distancing protocols in place, and we're pleased to have Congressman Stephen Lynch in Studio C with us this morning here in Needham. He's a Democrat. He's representing the state's 8th congressional district, first taking office in 2001. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Ed and Janet. Thank you.
Thank you. So as chair of a subcommittee on national security, you held a hearing this past week focused on Ukraine. Regardless of invasion, you heard a warning that the U.S. had to develop a long-term approach towards Russia. Why and what should it be? What did these military experts tell you?
Well, we did have a rather grim classified briefing on the situation in Ukraine. So I do believe, as the president has said, that we should expect an invasion within days. This is a follow-on to the invasion of Crimea and the annexation back in 2015. And it's clear that Putin's agenda is really to try to recreate some iteration of the former Soviet Union. I am worried. I'm worried about NATO's position. I think they have basically put their cards on the table and said that there will be economic sanctions if Russia takes Ukraine. And inadvertently, I think that Putin is attracted by that offer, and that he would gladly trade some economic pain for acquiring, the 44 million people in Ukraine as his subjects. So it's a very dangerous time. And, I support the president, but I'm also worried about the firmness of the NATO coalition and what will happen once shots are fired.
And regardless of what happens, I understand that there was testimony that there's worry about the long-term security, regardless of whether there's military intervention or not. Is that not correct?
Well, I think we have a new Cold War. I'm also concerned about the ramifications for Taiwan, because if NATO and the U.S. agree that we'll put an economic price on each country if it is invaded, I think Xi takes the long view. China takes the long view. So if you said to him, there'll be economic sanctions against China if you take Taiwan, I think he would gladly take that deal. And knowing the way the China approach has been, they would simply amortize those costs over the next 100 years. But in the end, they would take Taiwan. So we have to be very careful about, the one thing that Putin does, he keeps us guessing. And NATO has not done that. They have laid their cards right on the table and told the world what their approach would be. Part of that is the necessity of working with a coalition, a diverse coalition. Some countries right in the line of fire. So it's the nature of the problem itself.
I just wanted to pick up on two things that you just said. In the initial response, you used the word grim, and then in that response, you said this is a new Cold War. These are hurtful thresholds that you're reaching here.
Oh, without question. This is a game changer. Look, people don't realize that Ukraine is the largest country in Europe. We've got 44 million people. So this is, and it is basically the threshold to Eastern Europe. This is a moment of great consequence, and I hope that the president's recent messages trying to convey to the American people how serious this situation is getting through. I know we all have so many sources for our news, and sometimes the message doesn't really get through. But these are dangerous times, and this is a moment of great consequence.
Without dismissing that, because you can underscore that is absolutely true. Let's talk about January 6th. The House is still trying to gather information on January 6th. Donald Trump continues to set up roadblocks. The latest was his objections to handing over his White House visitor logs. Are you confident at all this committee will unearth vital information that the public already doesn't know?
Well, it's a race against time. I think they've done a good job, but I know that they've subpoenaed this week people who were falsely presenting themselves as electors to the Electoral College. I know we're getting down to a rather granular level of witness and involvement. So the question will be, what do you do with that body of evidence, and does the Attorney General or Department of Justice take over at some point, or and do Republicans join us at any point in a significant way to demand that the truth come out and that the violations be addressed?
Let's switch to some politically parochial issues. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi now thinks that there should be tougher restrictions on members trading stocks. Senator Elizabeth Warren is going even a step further, and she wants a ban on all elected officials trading individual stocks. Do you support this? Is this a good idea?
I think it is, right. So I mean, I have a pension fund, but it's all mutual funds. So
right.
you don't have control over this, that, or the other thing. Yeah?
Right.
Because we get too much information. I sit on the Financial Services Committee. So you do get advanced information by necessity. It comes at you. You know, you're in the middle of certain investigations. It might give you information that, if you wanted to exploit it, could bring you financial gain. So I absolutely support that. I think that should have been in place a long, long time ago. I completely support Senator Warren. You should not be trading individual stocks as a member of Congress.
But you expect that there will be pushback from Republicans, I suspect. No?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where the opposition is coming from, which members, but there is some discomfort among my Republican colleagues.
Congressman, let's talk about Build Back Better. Is it fair to say it's stuck in quicksand right now?
Well, the social aspect of it? Yeah. I would say the social infrastructure portion of the bill is stuck.
It's stuck.
I think there are a couple of items there that might be broken out, and one being universal pre-K. That's a huge issue. It basically adds a couple of years to every child's education by front-loading maybe a couple of years of pre-K. You know, just to make children familiar with the learning environment, a structured learning environment before they get to first grade. I think it would make a huge difference. It's also, you know, a form of daycare in a sense for parents that are trying to get back into the workforce. So I think that's very important.
I was going to say, are there other parts that you could separate and maybe?
Well, that's one of them.
Okay,
that's one of them. I
Yeah.
think it would be attractive to Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema. The other piece is the child tax credit.
Got it.
While it is costly, I think we all saw the ability to raise, you know, millions of children out of poverty. So I think those two pieces might be, or could be, broken out and get substantial support on both sides.
I want to talk about a local issue that you've been very involved with. The Weymouth compressor has been a major controversy in your district and basically the entire South Shore. Federal regulators admit it was a mistake to approve the license, but it will not revoke it. You're calling on them to close it. Do you have any confidence you're going to be able to succeed?
Well, it's too soon to tell. So I've asked PHMSA, which is the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, to revoke the license, to rescind it. I think there are ample procedural due process questions. So we have all these regulations that were meant to protect us. And after the community and the Fall River residents against the compressor station, we went forward. A number of mayors, Mayor Headland, Mayor Koch, Mayor Sullivan at the time, Mayor Kokoros from Braintree, we formed a coalition to oppose that. And we talked about the density of the area around that compressor station and how it should not be built under FERC guidelines. Well, we lost all those fights in court and in the administrative process.
So why do you think you're going to be able to
And then at the end of the
succeed?
day, FERC said, you know what, they were right. But they said it after we had gone through this whole process. So I believe we did not have our day in court. We did not have a fair hearing of our claims, because at the end of the day, the judge agreed with us, but they've already built and opened the plant and it's running. So I'm pressing. Right now, we're waiting for PHMSA to rule on my request. I petitioned them to withdraw the licensing agreement. But if they refuse, I still think in a legal forum we have a good case. We have ample evidence of the fact that the protections that were supposed to be available to the citizens in that area were not afforded to them. And I think we could push them back to square one. And hopefully, if you keep fighting, if you just keep fighting, eventually you'll exhaust your opponent and we'll win. That's my strategy here. And I think we're on the side of the angels here. We're on the side of the kids in that neighborhood, the families in that neighborhood, and it would be an injustice, in the very least, to not recognize the rights of the people in that area.